very much. First of all, I'd like to thank both the Kent School of Law and IIT, Illinois Institute of Technology, for hosting this wonderful event. And on behalf of both Splunk and ISSA, wonderful to be here, and thank you, everybody. We have a distinguished speaker today, and I could probably spend more time than he's going to be speaking just in his introduction. Calvin Nobles is currently the department chair and associate professor here at IIT, but of their School of College Computing, but has an illustrious background, going back to the military in the Navy, but specifically Cyber Command for U.S. Naval and Fleet Command. Pretty amazing. He's probably happy he's not doing it now with all the international threats that are happening, and probably the people that are doing that are under a lot more stress. Also commercial experience with Wells Fargo and other organizations, but as I said, currently with IIT, and we're very, very thankful to have him here. In addition to what I just mentioned, he also has at least 3 PhDs. Do you have any others that I don't know of? Okay, 3 PhDs, which makes me feel not as smart as I thought I was. So with no further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Nobles to join us today for the keynote speak.
Good evening. I promise I won't be long, and I promise I won't turn this into a lecture. So this presentation really is about getting you all to think about something differently and to think about the human element in cybersecurity, because it's an area where we really struggle, and it's an area where we haven't embraced it, and it's an area where it's really problematic for a lot of us. And so for the CISOs out there, the CIOs, the CTOs, CSOs, I don't want to be one of these smart guys that come to the table. I get it. You got a Thanksgiving-sized plate in front of you every day, and I'm not trying to put 2 more turkey legs on it. But I'm trying to help you get turkey legs off your plate. And so I say that very facetiously, but I'm really serious about it. Really, we have to start thinking differently about the human element in cybersecurity. And so with that, I would just like to say that this is not going to be a lecture. I do like lecturing, but this is not the place. This is a hard presentation to give because it really can be very boring sometimes. And so I put some comical stuff in there to make it comical, but I don't want to give a typical academic lecture where we look at statistics and all that. That's not fun. No, that's not fun at all. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll get started. Now I got it. So I love giving my presentation with a famous quote. Everybody know who this individual is, and this is why I love saying it. It's because we do spend a lot of money on everything, but we struggle with really investing in one of the weakest links in our security chain, and that's people. A lot of people get upset that I say that, but let me give you some data. 80 to 95% of all security breaches are due to what? It's due to what? Human error. Let me ask you another question. How many of you classify your human errors as a science? Human error is a science. Rule-based, knowledge-based, skill-based, or violations of policy. Been out there in existence since the 1980s. That's why I'm saying in cybersecurity, we don't go far enough with really understanding our human errors. And this is why this slide is so important. And so at the end of the day, what I want us to walk away with is, who really needs human factors engineering? How many of you ever heard of human factors engineering? How many of you know it's a scientific discipline? It is. It's been around for 80 years. But here's our struggle. When we say human factors, it's an ugly battle, because what are we saying? We're saying, is it the human factor, or are we saying human factors, right? As you can see, a distinct difference. One is about the behavior and the things we do within our operating system and with our information systems, with our information technology, and within the programs we operate. For instance, like this. My password, storing it in the disk, right? But really what we really want to focus on is the slide over here that says human factors, to really explore the way we work, to explore why errors occur, and to also design better ways. So, who is missing from the table? Look, I want you all to think about all your teams. Let me ask a series of questions. When you have a network problem, who do you call? When you have a software problem, who do you call? When you have a computer a computing issue, who do you call? How about that? Now let me ask you this. When you have a human factors problem, who do you call? Exactly. That's the best answer we're gonna get. So let me give you a little joke. So one day I was meeting with a global CISO, and we was talking about human factor engineering as a discipline, not the human factor that we so-called know it. That gets us in a lot of trouble, but it exists. We need to have an appreciation for human factors as we know it, but we also need to gain an appreciation for human factors as an engineering discipline in cybersecurity, right? And so I was meeting with this global CISO, and she said, what are you researching? I said, I'm researching human performance issues in cybersecurity. She said, you don't need to research that. You can just call HR. And I dropped my head. And I said, so you want me to call HR to address a problem that you created by building a complex cyber ecosystem that's causing you to burn out, that's causing your employees to be distracted, that's causing high levels of stress, and that's lack prioritization? How's HR going to help you with that? And she said, well, I'm confused. I said, that's why I'm here. But I really was there to help her. And now she understands that when we have to open our aperture when we're talking about the human element in cybersecurity, we have to look at it differently. Man, so here we go. When we look at engineering disciplines in cybersecurity, they're there. And this is not all of them. This is just some I put up there. There's a lot more. But guess the one that's missing the most? See that little one over there? Now let me ask you a question. Everybody should get it right. Which one been around the longest? Human factors engineering has been around since World War II. Born out of military aviation because we was crashing planes every day. And so it was born out of experimental psychology. And it's been around forever. And the beauty of it is, the things that we're experiencing with the human element in cybersecurity isn't new. The medical community addressed it. Remember we had patients going in, supposed to get a left leg removed, and they get a right leg and a right arm removed. We had a patient that was going in to have a lung removed. They come out with everything else removed. So the medical community really had to address this, and they did through human factors. They really did. Aviation. Now, minus the incidents we had in the last 4 or 6 weeks, but aviation got it right. They got it right when it comes to understanding people and technology and processes. You see the correlation between cybersecurity? We have a lot in common with aviation, more so than most of us will agree with, but it's there. And the reason I like to show this slide is because we have to start thinking differently about human factors engineering. Most of you, let me ask, how many of you got a human factors engineer on your team? Why not? Then let me ask you this. Who's solving your people problem? Right. And so that's why the issues we have, the answer he gave is what everybody else always gives, HR. So you're wondering why we have issues in cybersecurity that are sustained, like 80 to 95% of all data breaches caused by human error. That's not new. That's been sustained for over 10 years. Normally when I give this presentation, I give it under the title, Let's Stop Admiring the Problem. But today I want to do a little thing different. I want us to really start resonating, how can human factors engineering really help you? Now I'm going to tell you one of the problems is, academic has failed you. We don't teach human factors engineering in cybersecurity or IT or any tech courses. The closest we get is human-computer interaction and computer science. Human-computer interaction only teaches you with the digital interfaces, right? It don't teach you the full immersion of understanding human factors in cybersecurity. And now what's going on, human factors also gave birth to HCI. HCI is giving birth to usable privacy and security now. These things are beginning to morph, and they're morphing in the wrong direction because they are all now scaled-down versions of what human factors engineering should really be about, right? So this is why academia has failed you. I just did some research about 2 months ago, and you know, a lot of schools say we are NSA accredited cybersecurity defense programs, right? Anybody want to guess how many undergrad schools teach human factors in cybersecurity? Well, just one course. Anybody want to guess? 14. 14 out of 303. Now, that's just the title. But when I start looking at the courses are not really teaching these things. Graduate schools. There's 147 graduate programs in the country that are NSA accredited. Only 8 teach this course. I teach 2 of them. I teach it at Arizona State, and I teach it at Illinois Tech. Total immersion courses in human factors engineering and cybersecurity. These are some of the subjects that I teach in this course. As you can see, how many of us ever had a course in cyber psychology? Cyber psychology is new, it's been around 10 years. Cyber psychology is how we interact with digitized equipment and online. It's the persona we take, right? How does that technology influence our behavior? Because some people get online and they become whoever they want to be. I love The Rock. I can get on the line and be Rock Johnson whenever I want to. But as you can see, I'm not The Rock. I'm far from it. But that's what some people do when they get online. They take on ulterior motives and alter egos, right? The other thing we really take a look at, really, is like cybersecurity awareness. I'm going to pick on you all for a little while about your cybersecurity awareness program. Everybody in your organization don't eat mayonnaise. Don't ever forget that. But your cybersecurity program is a mayonnaise-based program. You know what that means? You slap it on the sandwich and you feed it to them. Everybody doesn't learn the same way. If I had the opportunity to learn, I'm a hands-on type guy. Put me in a room and give me hands-on, and we'll get there all day. When you put me in a room and I got to listen to a professor, it ain't going to happen. That's me taking my own medicine, right? And so that's why my classes are very interactive, because I don't like the students having to listen to me for long periods of time. But the point I'm trying to make here is that you have to look at how people learn, right? And we need to move away from cybersecurity awareness to cybersecurity competency, right? To where we enforcing people and we helping people better and become better aware at cybersecurity. Awareness is a temporary word to me. How many of you give your cybersecurity awareness program or your lessons once a year? Twice a year? 3 times a year? I think cybersecurity awareness should be reinforced at a minimum 5 or 6 times a year. You know why? Because when you reinforce learning, it becomes habit. And here's the other thing. As cyber threat actors change their threat behavior and change their tactics and procedures, some companies wait. If your training occurs in January, you might not get new training until the following January. That is way too long for your employees not to be aware of a new tactic that cyber threat actors are using, right? So it has to be reinforced. When I was in the Navy, I had a job, one of the greatest jobs I had in the Navy was being a shooter. Anybody know what a shooter is? It's the coolest job in the Navy. It's the guys that launch the planes off the aircraft carrier. It's like playing with a giant slingshot at 30 years old. But it's really more serious than that. But that's what it really feels like. But anyway, I used to hate the fact that we did fire drill training every week in the middle of the night sometimes. I hated it. Cold, wet, hot. But let me tell you something. When there was a fire, everybody knew what to do. It was controlled chaos. It was a beautiful thing. Because the training was reinforced, it was second nature. Does that make sense? Cybersecurity, we have to get there. And I know there's a cost point tied to this. I'm not saying that in blindness. I get it. Because every time you do training, somebody's in the back saying, we got 30,000 employees, and it's a 1-hour training, right? You always got that smart guy, probably some accountant or some dude who don't want to do the training in the background saying that, right? But 30 hours of training is worth a major data breach. It's worth it, isn't it? And so one of the other things we talk about here is human-centered security. I hear this word a lot in cybersecurity, and as soon as I read it in cybersecurity, I go look to see what it means. People don't define it. We have to stop using words that's not defined. What is human-centered anyway, right? It's nothing more than an approach where we put people at the center and then we design and build around them. How do we design and build today? What do we build around? Technology. You're exactly right. We are very technologically focused. To some degree, that's right, because technology has given us an advantage. But the problem is when you don't train your personnel in parallel with your advancement of technology, you get a lack of trust. Or what you get an over-reliance on technology. And again, we've seen this before. I want you all to get out of your little boxes and start looking at other domains that just dealing with people issues and human errors and mistakes. In 2013, when I wrote my first dissertation, I waited 6 months for the FAA to put out a report on pilot training. And you know what it said? Pilots could no longer fly the aircraft with a high level of standard of basic airmanship skills because they have become used to flying with automation. Now, turn that around and look at your team. Do you see the same? Are you thinking the same now? That your team now is so highly redundant on automation that they might be forgetting the fundamentals, right? Just something to think about. Human limitations. Your personnel have limitations. It's been in literature for a while that a software engineer should not program no more than how many hours a day? 4. You wonder why we have so many errors? You think they're seeding that? Computing is really cognitively high cognitive demand, right? The more highly cognitive things you are doing, the less time you're going to be able to do it at a very high level. The only people that sustain high level of cognitive abilities because they've been trained to do so, special forces. They do it with ease. But look at the training they go through though, right? They induce them in that level of training and get in those certain conditions, and they give them high-level tasks to do, right? And so most of us don't go through that at all. And so this is why it's important to understand human limitations. In cybersecurity, we have built these very complex ecosystems. Let me ask you this question. How many of you can quantify and qualify the complexity of your ecosystem right now? If I say put it on the scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being the hardest, how many of you can do it? And be factual about it. Something we ain't even thought about, right? How many of you have a user experience team? How many of you have a user experience team in your organization? They're always looking externally mostly, right? When I was at Wells Fargo, I met with the user experience team. And I said, you all have 250 people. I said, that's a miniature brigade. I said, can I get about 12 of you all? And they said, for what? I said, I want to take that same focus you take and look externally at customer engagement and at customer experience and look back inward from a cybersecurity experience. How can we look and see what using your tools and your process to determine if our cybersecurity program is really healthy, if it's too difficult, if it's complex, to get the employee experience from cybersecurity. And then we had to get it from multiple dimensions. You have to get it from a tech dimension. You also got to get it from a non-technical employee dimension, right? And so this is why this stuff is so important. And this is why I'm so passionate about it. It's because most people don't enjoy having this conversation. But it's a conversation that we need to have this conversation. Academia, we need to do better. We need more professors who specialize in human factors and psychology teaching in tech. Anything up there you find very interesting? How many of you know that your cybersecurity program is a socio-technical system? How many of you know that? Your system is based on technology and people, right? Anytime one get out of balance with each other, you create a gap. When you got too much technology, you create a social gap. When you got too much focus on people and not enough technology, like small businesses, you create a technology gap. They have to be together. So let me tell you how I teach this class, especially now with ChatGPT. No more writing assignments. No more writing, it's pointless. But really what I try to do is help the student take away some tools that they can add to their repertoire. How many of you ever noticed that when the Equifax CEO went to Congress and testified, he said that an information technologist was the cost of the data breach? How many of you agree with that? You guys passed the class. You get 100 the first day. My students, all their hands go up. Sometimes their feet, toes, and everything else. They believe that the information technologist caused the incident. But see, I teach them human factors analysis and classification system. I know you all have a lot of free time. Look that up tonight when you're sitting around doing nothing. It's an HVAC. It's the same system used to explore aviation mishap accidents. And what it is, it's a layered approach where you start where the error occurred, and then you walk back it up the organization all the way up to the executive level of the organization. Nobody is left unturned. Nobody. The purpose of this is to prevent it from happening again. Blame is not part of the solution. Blame is not part of it. It's not about blaming, it's about preventing. I teach my students that. And then I have them to write the nano codes for the HVAC, because HVAC is based on nano codes. And then they do it. And they have to apply it to a major security incident. And then they have to brief it for their midterms. I'm gonna tell you, this year, I was one happy freaking professor, I could tell you. They knocked it out of the park. I was so happy, I was like, dude, I don't know what to do. I was just so happy. Typically when I grade midterms, I'm pulling my hair out, truly. But this time around, my students, they did very well. But I teach them this so when they leave school, they can go to industry and they can be able to contribute to you all. How do we investigate human errors and accidents? That needs to be taught. And it needs to be separate from incident response. Why does it need to be separate from incident response? Because incident response is about getting back to normalcy, right? But you still got to find a way to uncover and discover what happened to prevent it from happening again. And remember, it's not about blame. It's not about blame. It can never be about blame. And so we have to get rid of this in cybersecurity. When it comes to human factors in cybersecurity, I see a lot of this. And this hurts us really bad. I remember when I worked at Wells Fargo, and they didn't really know what to do with me because I did some of everything, really. And my boss was like, so I heard you want to be a human factors engineer. I said, sure, why not? He said, well, let me tell you what I know about human factors. And I let him go on for about 30 minutes, and I said, Kurt, you don't know anything about human factors. And that's not to put you down. It's just to show you that you have the Dunning-Kruger effect. See, sometimes we have to listen. And that's what human factors engineers do very well. We listen to people to understand their problem. Our job is to redesign the system, to make it less friction, to optimize human performance and behavior. That's our job. When you got a problem, a human factors engineer helps you solve that problem. A software engineer is not going to fix a burnout problem. A cybersecurity engineer is not going to fix a lack of prioritization problem, right? But a human factors engineer has been trained to do that. That's why we have to start thinking about this differently. And we have to get rid of this. Everywhere I go, people tell me, let me tell you what I know about human factors. And you know what they tell me? And so there's two definitions of human factors, right? I should have explained that earlier. The working definition is where our behavior every day, the things we do. Most of the time, it's going to be associated with somebody doing something negative. Plugging a USB port into a computer, leaving a laptop in the car overnight that gets stolen, putting your password under your desk, sharing your password with other people, shoulder surfing, piggybacking, all those things. We always say the human factor. I don't like when people say human factor because it's too bland. It's not deep enough. What do you mean when you say the human factors? Are you saying human errors, human mistakes, bad behavior? Let's call it that. And then the scientific definition of human factors, that is a scientific discipline aimed at improving the system through system design, where we're removing high friction areas, complexity, right? So we got some CISOs in the room, and here's one of my major concerns with CISOs. They're getting burnt out. That concerns me. They eat that Thanksgiving Day plate every day, and it's killing them. But how many of you have an anti-fatigue program? Right? Exactly. What is it? An anti-fatigue program. You know who has an anti-fatigue program? Doctors. It's not even documented in policy. When they don't feel well or they're tired, you know what they say? Clear my calendar. Reschedule the patients. The liability is too high. But when you got your lead engineer, principal of architecture in there, that person might be going through a divorce. They're there on the job physically, mentally they're gone. There's no out for them. And so this is where we really have to start paying attention to people. Stress factors have so many of your employees checked out, and you don't know it because we don't have any type of anti-fatigue program in place for them at all. We should. When I was an aviator in the Navy, people used to laugh at us because we had a rule. A lot of time it wasn't a good rule, 12 hours, throttle to bottle, bottle to throttle, right? But that rule saved lives. Everything we do in aviation is written in blood. Somebody has paid the price for it. But in cybersecurity, we need to learn from other domains that are very similar to ours, right? For instance, you got employees that work in 12-hour days. You think that's good? No. Cognitively, do you think they at work for 12 hours? No. We got to find a way to implement anti-fatigue program. Stressors in life, medical conditions, divorces, issues with children, aging parents that are not doing well, are all stressors that take away from us cognitively. Most cybersecurity professionals don't have a way to come in a corner and say, and call timeout. Nor do you plan for that person to be in that state so they can call timeout, right? Double-edged sword, right? But this is why human factors in cybersecurity has to come to the forefront. We got to take it off the second row team, the second team, and put it back on the first team where it belongs. Here's some things I was talking about. None of us would have probably ever thought about human performance issues in cybersecurity, right? HR can't fix this for you. There's another list called the Dirty Dozen. It was determined by some aviation researchers. I know you all have plenty of time. So when you're home tonight, sitting around watching your favorite news show, look up the Dirty Dozen and tell me if every last one of them doesn't apply to apply to cybersecurity. Every last one of them. Their attitudes and behaviors that pretty much degrade your overall cybersecurity mission. The true enormity of this is we don't really understand what we don't know about human factors in cybersecurity. You don't have the right person at the table. Remember, as much as we love our cybersecurity professionals, they can't fix your human problems. And one of the things I've been seeing lately is, I'm not going to call the vendor out, they've been talking about managing human risk. That's the worst thing ever. And I tell you why. All risk in cyber is what? It's human risk. All risk in every organization is what? It's human risk. We created it, right? And so that's why I'm saying little catchy titles get us in trouble because they keep us from really understanding the true enormity of what we're dealing with. This is where we are, folks. Our approach to human factors in cybersecurity is way too narrow. We got the iceberg waiting on us. And it's going to get worse with artificial intelligence. It's going to get worse with all the advanced technology that we put in place. And the only way to fix this is for people like me and you and the government to partner together to fix this. I was on the phone till like 1 o'clock last night with a researcher over in the UK. A company asked her to solve their human factors problem. But they had already gave her a list of things to do. They had already solved the problem. Not even close. Not even close. And I told her, I said, I think you should walk away from this. I wouldn't even touch this. I've been doing human factors for decades, and I wouldn't even touch this. This is a problem. But you know what the biggest problem was? It wasn't that they were not trying. It was that they did not know how to classify human factors engineering. They thought it was something like people behavior. Human factors engineering is a scientific discipline. Look it up. Been around for 80 years, I promise you. and we need it in cybersecurity. Hopefully I convince you today that we don't have all the people at the table, and that we need to make some changes, and we need to start looking at things differently. And the next time you have a people problem, don't call HR. They could give two shits about your people problem. What you need to say is, how do I bring in the right person to solve this problem, right? Who can I really bring in to solve this problem? And it's a hard problem to solve because human factors engineers are not sitting on the sideline waiting to play. They're already playing somewhere. So you're gonna have to go get them, and you have to convince them because there's not that many of us. Any questions?
Yep.
Operational tempo, meaning like pace. Like pace. You know, like for instance, when I go to work, I work at the school now. We got 3 major projects going on. How many of you think I'm doing any of those 3 projects well? Probably not. Probably not. I'm barely hanging on. I'm hanging on the back end of the aircraft while it's flying. Does that make sense, sir? So tempo really is about how do you help control tempo? You control tempo through prioritization. That's the human factors answer. You control it by...
To me, it's workload.
It can be workload. It can be workload. Tempo is a military word, right? So I need to fix that. Thank you. I'll put workload up there.
So how do we keep the digital mindset from invading the rest of our life and making everyone think digitally rather than with regard to the human factors? Take, for instance, I'm a marketer by profession and education, and I remember, you know, when I got into marketing, even though it was always a bastardized field because you don't need a license or a specific technology to run it, there were factors that were being, or I should have said there were parts of that were being taught, like human behavior, research, secondary and primary, and things of that nature that, you know, that really took advantage, took the human equation into account when you're doing planning, strategic planning and tactical planning. So nowadays, though, it has become nothing but technology. A director of market, a CMO, all they need to know is email and what do you call it, social media and stuff like that, marketing automation, and there is no strategic planning and all that, and no human factors at all in the equation, just as is the case with IT. So the question is, my question is what you're doing and you're evangelizing the beginning of how we make the world understand that we have to take human factors into the equation to keep things from being nothing but, you know, us becoming robots.
Right, and that's a really good question. So the reason I went back to this slide is because earlier I talked about human-centered cybersecurity, right? How do we design cybersecurity programs with humans at the center? Well, first of all, you got to kick technology out of the center right now and place people at the center and build around it. But you're exactly right. We are more focused on technology than we are people right now. The problem is with technology, the research already is telling us this, is that you can implement all the technology in the world. You will not optimize it or get optimal use out of it until you place people at the center. Because when people don't understand the technology, they don't use it. In fact, a lot of them put your organization at higher risk because they circumvent it, because you have built complicated systems, right? And so that's why this is so important. But you're exactly right. So when we talk about designing things, building things, you got to bring the human factors engineers in the room early to be a part of the planning, and they will let you know, hey, what you got going on right here, I see some problems with it, right? And they will help you work through those friction areas so that you can have a more smooth landing rather than having high friction areas and what we call after effects. That's when you implement something and then you determine that you got bad adverse effects afterwards. That's what we're trying to avoid. I'm gonna tell you, I've done this talk for 5 years and I stopped. I stopped because I thought people got tired of hearing it. Yeah.
Dr. Nobles, thank you very much. As was just said, I found this extremely eye-opening and impactful because I always looked at a lot of this as the intersectionality between behavior and psychology. Mm-hmm. And by putting it into the human factor engineering bucket makes a lot more sense. One of the things that I was wondering, and this is just an opinion question on your part, have we advanced too much on technology to surpass the human factor? And what can we do about mitigating it besides just putting the human element into it? But have we kind of gone too far too fast? Because it seems as though, especially if you look at different generations, some can keep up with it, some can't. But I suspect even our young people will get to a point where I don't like using the term burnout because that's putting the blame on the individual. Whereas a lot of times you're not giving them enough resources to do everything. So my question to you is, have we gone too far on technology? And if so, or if not, how can we mitigate it or slow it down a bit so that we can coexist better?
All right, you said a lot there. Well, let me address one part real quick. When it comes to burnout, most people feel fatigued, they feel stressed, they feel tired. They equate that as burnout. When you are burnt out, how long do you think it takes to recover from when you're totally burnt out? It takes 3 to 4 months totally unplugging from everything and doing nothing. 3 to 4 months. So most people can recover in 2 to 3 weeks. That's not burnout, that's fatigue. All right, but to answer your question, there's a education gap we have in cybersecurity when it comes to human factors. So I think once we start educating people, and I'm working really hard with a lot of colleges and universities to put this in the cybersecurity curriculum, the IT curriculum, and the computer science curriculum, so that we can start teaching students to understand this, so when they get out in the workforce, they already have this knowledge, right? And they can start sharing this knowledge. But I don't think we're too far yet. And the reason I say that is because we can always integrate human factors into the situation, and human factors engineers are trained to help re-engineer current processes. They're not just there to start from the beginning. They will look at a process and say, let's re-engineer this process so it's not so cognitively demanding, or you don't have people who got what we call low cognitive demand working high cognitive tasks, right? And that's something else we don't do in cybersecurity. How do you look at your task and say, do I got the right person doing the right job? That leads to symptoms of burnout because people feel like they got a mismatch in their talent and their jobs, but it don't really lead to burnout. And so burnout is a whole nother conversation we can have. But did I answer your question?
No, the question, yes, but the latter part was, have we gone too far with technological advancement that we've surpassed the ability for people to keep up to it, or are we getting
No, I think it's always bad when you have technology advancement and don't have the people part worked out. But I don't think we reached a point to where it's beyond return. We can always stop. That's when, like the.
I don't know if we can. That's the problem. It seems like we're just advancing
Right.
and going at such a rapid pace. At what point will we?
So this is when we get into the argument of the social determinism versus technology determinism. What you're talking about is technology determinism leading the way, and we just chasing it. But social determinism said, stop. We're ready to say, let's look at this differently, and let's look at the impacts on society rather than chasing technology. Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. I loved your presentation. It's so good. I worked for the city of Springfield for 2 more weeks because my boss lost the election, but I built a cybersecurity program, the first one for the city. So we have a corporate side, and then we also have a publicly owned utility that also oversees the water. So we have the ISD side, the corporate side, and then the utility side. I'm trying to get these guys together to hang out outside of the office to build a camaraderie so that they can work together really well in the event of a cyber incident. So a lot of these guys have military backgrounds, but the two sides don't want to talk to each other. And I'm trying to enforce that they're going to have to cross-train and be able to support each other should there be an event. What advice do you have to bring such groups together?
You know, I find it strange that military people don't want to work together. So I think there's some politics there, and I also think there's some leadership that's not making that happen, because military people will typically gravitate towards each other, especially when they get on the job with each other. And so I find that really strange. But I think the one thing you do from a human factors engineering aspect is bring everybody together and hear what everybody's concerns are. Don't try to solve any problems. Just hear what everybody's concerns are. So a human factors engineer is part psychologist, part engineer, and part counselor. We like to hear everybody's problems because at the end of the day, we're responsible for solving your problems. We can't solve your problems that we don't know about. So that's what I recommend. Get everybody together. Don't try to do any work. Just talk through their issues, whatever their issues may be, because they might not want to talk because they might be saying, I already explained my issues and nobody want to do anything about it. And then what the human factors engineer would do is just sit there looking at the problems and try to put it in order from being the more serious problems to the least serious problems and start from the top and work down.
So it's not really thank you for that, I agree. I think a lot of it is they were never empowered before. They never had somebody on the executive side paying attention to them or giving them any voice or power. So that's something I figured out. But also in our budget, I had to give the mayor's budget presentation, and I just spent half of it reciting the names of every single person that works on both sides because they're never acknowledged. And that alone was a huge start to start those conversations. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and the other thing I would tell you, I didn't share this slide tonight, but typically in the slide deck, I have something what I call an executive human factors council. And what it is, it's a human factors council that don't cost you any money other than time. That's money though. But it's led by an executive, and what it is every organization in your organization have a representative that works with a human factors engineer to work towards solving human problems. We had one when I was in the squadron, and we set it up. And what we did, we set it up for people to come forth to tell us that they were struggling. And what it did, it helped people who were mentally checked out from being in the cockpit. We was able to put them back in the training, in the simulators. We would do other things with them to keep them as current as possible, but it kept them from killing other people in the aircraft. Things like that really work. If you really want to know how fatigued your people are, have your executive human factors councils put together a survey. Find out how fatigued they are. Find out how complex your operations are. Find out why people are not performing at an optimum level.
I just wanted to add on to, there's associations, Information Systems Security Association, the InfraGard, Chicago Member Alliance could be some additional references for them.
Yeah.
We had two more. We had,
So I'll make mine really quick. So I teach a management of IT course at Northwestern, and primarily the course is about soft skills, teaching soft skills. What I'm seeing is from this human factor engineering piece, I really believe that management, leadership in IT really needs this because they rely on them to basically be the go-to people for this type of problem solving, right? And I don't believe that a lot of these management or leaders are equipped to do this. They need the knowledge. So are you also looking at introducing this type of learning for IT management or executive leadership type of curriculums? Because I think it's really valuable.
Yes, what you just talked about was my second dissertation. And so when I interviewed a lot of senior managers in cybersecurity and IT, they had no idea what human factors was really about, and they omitted it up front. So to answer your question, I'm working with two other people. I'm working with a psychologist and another human factors engineer, and we're trying to put together some curriculum. And we're definitely going to start with the executive side, but we're also going to put something together for the board side as well. Because what we find out is that a lot of board members, keep putting a lot of undue pressure, but they themselves don't really understand. And so we're going to start at executives, we're going to put one for the board, and we're going to put one for other people who might have an interest in just learning about human factors. And we're going to put it in a non-academic way. Because a lot of people don't want to come to class and feel like they got to take a test. And so we don't want that. We just want them to come in and learn and be able to take those skills and use them on the job.
Professor Nobles, you suggested something about stopping technology, but any company that tries to slow down technology will get left behind. Any country that tries to stop technology, for example, we're involved in a technology race with other countries like China, for example. Let's say we stop it here unilaterally in the US, they'll get ahead of us. So I don't know about how do you propose we stop technology?
So what I mean by stopping technology, I'm not mean stopping it for an extended long period of time, but stop and just do a quick check. Hey, where are we? Are we bringing the people along with us, or are we just leaving them behind? Or are we bringing the training programs with us? Or are we leaving that behind too? Are we taking the complexity out of this? Or are we just blowing everybody away, right? Because even with ChatGPT, as human factors engineers, we haven't even started to get our head wrapped around that. And I was just telling somebody earlier today, in the academic side of the house, when it comes to artificial intelligence, there's a platform out there called Jenny AI, Jenny.ai. I want you all to look it up, JENNI.ai. If I was to type in my title, Human Factors in Cybersecurity, and go to the next line, it writes the next sentence for me. And then ask me if I wanted to cite it. You see what I'm saying? How do we get our head wrapped around that? That's a true game changer. And so as a human factors engineer, it's a struggle for us. It's a real struggle right now. But to be honest with you, I'd rather be working with you all solving the cybersecurity problems and issues that we have than chasing the AI bug right now.
Thank you, Doctor.